Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we've just gone over everything you need to know for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offseason and their schedule prediction. I gave them a B. I think they did a really good job fixing every hole that they had, bringing back their guys, showing loyalty, and I think that was really important, at least to build a culture, and this is kind of a transitional period for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I really like what they did. I gave them a B for the offseason, as well as going through their season, and I did have it be a little bit of a disappointing season. Had them anywhere from 7 to 10 wins. I put them at 7 wins. I did break down game by game, so if you disagree with any of them, let me know. I'll argue with you in the comments if you feel strongly about any of those. But in this segment, we are going to go over the offseason for the final team in the NFC South, that being the Atlanta Falcons. The Atlanta Falcons had quite the offseason. They had not too many moves, but they had big moves. Firing a head coach, bringing in a brand new quarterback. We'll get to all of that and more in just a second. But before we do, remember that if you would like to be an even, excuse me, I apologize. If you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments, throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate all of you guys for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful July 5th, Friday, excuse me. Hope everybody had a great July 4th. But like I was saying, we are going to get into the Atlanta Falcons here. The Atlanta Falcons are, as you might expect, division favorites after bringing in Kirk Cousins. That was the big signing this offseason. They bring in Kirk Cousins, and they're actually hit with a tampering thing. They're hit with tampering fines for it, losing a 5th-round pick next year. But outside of Kirk Cousins, which obviously that is the big addition, right? Bringing in Kirk Cousins, replacing your mess of a quarterback situation that was last year, replacing Taylor Heineke and Desmond Ridder, who, with now a quarterback that's established, that you know is good, bringing in Raheem Morris as a head coach. But it's not just Kirk Cousins that happened. They also had an interesting choice with the NFL draft, right? They had the 8th overall pick, and instead of picking a guy like Rome Odunze to help complete what would have been a great wide receiver core with Darnell Mooney on the outside and Drake London and Kyle Pitts and Bijan Robinson in the run game, they go for Michael Penix Jr. And this happens basically the same week that they sign Kirk Cousins. And Kirk Cousins doesn't seem to like it. It's a weird thing because they signed Kirk Cousins to a 4-year contract, which would take over the entire rookie deal aside from the 5th-year option of Michael Penix Jr. You don't know if you want to take that 5th-year option, especially for a guy that's an older quarterback. Now, I like Michael Penix. I like Michael Penix maybe more than the other guy. I think he was my QB2 in this draft, and he went, QB2. But all of that being said, or he didn't go QB. He wasn't my QB2. He was my QB. He was going QB4. He went QB4 in this draft, like he should have, at least in my opinion. But this is not a situation that's cohesive for him, right? You just go out and you pay Kirk Cousins over $100 million, right? Guaranteed. And now you're saying, hey, Kirk, I know we just gave you a 4-year deal, but this rookie, we're going to, mostly based on the timeline that I'm looking at here, we're saying, hey, he's going to replace you in just about 2-3 seasons, because they're going to want to take a look at Michael Penix, right? Before they say, hey, let's just give you that 5th-year option, right? They said they wanted to build like the Green Bay Packers, but, the difference was they had expiring contracts before they had to extend Jordan Love, extend Aaron Rodgers. Those guys sat for 2 years, but the contracts were up, that the timeline worked. These contracts match up perfectly. 4 years plus an option, right? This is not something that is going to be an easy transition of power to do. This is This is going to shake up things in Atlanta, especially if Kirk Cousins does well. Now, he's coming off of that Achilles, and it's good to have an insurance guy if you really do believe in Michael Penix. And like I said, I'm a big Michael Penix fan, but Atlanta is not the spot for him. The second round was equally as confusing. They take Rook Oroho, excuse me, when you had other first round defensive tackles at the same position still available. Washington comes in and takes him there in the second round, but Johnny Newton was still available there, excuse me. And Washington comes in and takes advantage of that. But you draft your first two picks are kind of head scratchers, right? And maybe I'm completely wrong about Johnny Newton and Ruka Rojo, but that's just my opinion. I think they really messed up this draft in an offseason that they didn't really do too much outside of that, right? They bring in Kirk Cousins, obviously. They bring in Darnell Mooney, another guy that they sign off of free agency. Ray-Ray McCloud as a returner after letting Cordell Patterson walk, who I think probably was a better returner, maybe was asking for too much money there. But I mean, the new return rules, Ray-Ray McCloud might be a big pickup there. But there weren't too many crazy additions this offseason for the Atlanta Falcons. I mean, you have a young core already established, but I would have liked them to try and build something along the defense. You have Jesse Bates, who's really good. AJ Terrell, really good in the secondary. But pass rush outside of Grady Jarrett, no one was getting any pass rush, and it's not like anything really changed this offseason. They picked up Kentavious Street. It doesn't move me. They draft Ruka Rojo. They draft the defensive tackle in the second round, and I mean, he might be good. That's what they did this offseason doesn't really inspire me. And again, I think overall it's going to be a positive grade, and that is simply because they had such a massive upgrade at quarterback. But what's holding this back from being an A minus, B plus of an offseason is the fact that they did not address their biggest need outside of quarterback, which was pass rush. And they had the perfect opportunity to do that in the draft, if not in the first round, in the second round even, and they kind of did it, but they got, in my opinion, the wrong guy. The first round, no defensive player went until 15. You had Dallas Turner, you had Liatu Latu, you had these great pass rushers available, and nothing against Michael Penix, but that's a move for the future. You have to plan for the now before you can plan for the future, and nobody planned for the now in Atlanta, at least from where I'm sitting. So if they had gotten an elite pass rusher this offseason, if they had made a better pick in that first round, I think that this offseason, I'm probably giving an A to, because they hit all their biggest needs with huge upgrades. But instead, they sit here and they make, I think, what was a catastrophic mistake, so I can't give them anything more than a B minus. Again, they're getting a positive grade because Kirk Cousins is such a huge upgrade at quarterback. But outside of him, they didn't do anything to drastically improve this team, a team that's been middling with plenty of potential. We talk about Kyle Pitts' potential all the time. We talk about Drake London's potential all the time. Bijan Robinson came in and flashed that potential last season. Whether it was coaching, which Raheem Morris, I think, is a solid head coach hire. I like that hire. Or whether it was the play calling or the coaching, or maybe it was just the team, but they did great on offense, and they could have knocked this offseason out of the park if they just got another great pass rusher to put next to Grady Jarrett. I really do think that this team kind of squandered what could have been maybe the best offseason of the whole NFL. But I'm going to give them a B minus here. Let me know what you think of the Falcons. And in our next segment, we're going to go over the Falcons schedule game by game. We're going to give them a record, whether or not they make the playoffs in this brand new Kirk Cousins era. So stick around for that. We'll be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we've just gone over the Atlanta Falcons offseason. I'm giving them a B minus, but it's a disappointed B-. They could have been a whole lot better if they had knocked the draft out, gotten an elite edge rusher, someone to get pressure on the quarterback to pair with what is really a solid secondary. Um, we also talked all about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We did their offseason. We gave them I think we gave them I forget I think we gave them a C plus here. They didn't do anything too flashy, but they prepared for the future. So I think we gave them a C plus there. And then we went over their record. I'm giving them 7-10 on the year, although that could be anywhere from 7 to 10 wins, because this team has like a low floor, kind of high ceiling. But I have them on the lower end. I'm expecting a little bit of a Baker Mayfield regression here. But in this segment, we're going to go over the Atlanta Falcons schedule, game by game, give you a win-loss record every single time, and then we'll see if they make the playoffs, if they are able to get past the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the top of that division. But before we get into that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to add, go and go ahead and throw that in the comments, throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate all of you guys for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Friday afternoon. I hope everybody had a great July 4th. But like I was saying, in this segment, we're going to go over the Atlanta Falcons schedule, deep dive into their schedule, every single game. Where do we start? We start in week one. Week one against the Steelers, and this is not an easy start. We talk about a Steelers defense that is great. I don't know what's going to happen with the quarterback situation with Justin Fields or Russell Wilson, but I'm going to give the Steelers. I'm going to give the Steelers a win here. I just really like their defense, their pass rush. This is a solid Falcons offensive line, but I think we're going to start off slow on the Kirk Cousins era in Atlanta. It doesn't get really any easier. That's a game they want to win if they want to start off hot, and that continues in week 2 against the Eagles in Philly. No, that's not going to happen. They fall to 0-2 early on this season. Again, Kirk Cousins, he's coming off that Achilles. I think he starts a little bit slow. He probably gets it figured out in this game. I think going against the Steelers week 1 with coming off an Achilles, is not going to be a successful run. I think he'll be fine by week 2, week 3, but then they got the Eagles and the Chiefs, and I love how much the Eagles improved this offseason. I think they're going to be able to, I think that'll be a slugfest of a game. It's not going to be easy, but again, they're not going to be able to get pressure on Jalen Hurts, and with his ability to move around the pocket and the weapons that the Eagles have, I think the Eagles will end up taking this game, as well as week 3 against the Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes, that I think this one also could be a good game, but the 2-time defending Super Bowl champions are not going to lose to the Falcons here, at least not yet in week 3. It's a tough start to the season. 0-3. Now, it's not against easy competition, and I think if you threw them in a schedule like the Bucs, I think they're 2-1 here. You throw them in a schedule like the Panthers, they're probably 3-0, honestly. But that's just how the schedule works sometimes, and they need to bounce back. This is not saying, hey, this is going to be a bad Falcons team. I do believe in this Falcons team, but starting off 0-3 is a tough look for the Kirk Cousins era. I think they bounce back here against the Saints in week 4, though. Week 4 against the Saints at home. Probably their easiest game of the season so far. Again, I can be convinced that they beat the Steelers there, but that defense with Kirk Cousins coming back from injury, I don't think that's going to be a good sign. So 1-3 after week 4, another division game against the Bucs, and we talked about this earlier on in the show. I'm taking the Falcons here, improving to 2-3, now tied for first place in that division with the Saints and the Bucs as well. As we head into week 6 against the Panthers. And I think they actually lose this one. 3 straight division games is not easy. They're going on the road. I think this Panthers team made some improvements, and I think Bryce Young will have a good game It will be good for a good game every once in a while. They lose this one to the Panthers, fall to 2-4 on the season. Week 7 against the Seahawks, they get right here. They're gonna beat the Seahawks at home. Geno Smith, I think, should be the starter. I know a lot of people are talking about Sam Howell with the new coaching staff, but I think Geno Smith will be the starter there still. I really like this secondary for the. Excuse me. I really like the secondary for the Falcons, and the Seahawks have a bad offensive line, so I think the Falcons will be able to win this game in Week 7, improve to 3-4 on the young season. Week 8 against the Bucks on the road. I think they split this series overall. Again, the Bucks are a good team, and on the road here in Tampa Bay, I'm giving this win to the Buccaneers. The Falcons now halfway through the season, they fall to 3-5. A tough start, but their schedule does get easier as time goes on. They got all the tough games, or most of the tough games, out of the way. The last really tough game, I think, that's on their schedule comes up next, Week 9 against the Cowboys, and I do think they take care of business here. Kirk Cousins against the Cowboys, familiar opponent, and I don't know. This just feels like a game that the Falcons will win. Again, this I think this will be a fun game to watch. But I'm taking the Falcons to take down the Cowboys, and from there's not really too much of a roadblock, right? Sitting there after Week 9, again the real midway point of the season now, at 4-5, 500. They got the Saints, the Broncos, the Chargers, the Vikings, the Raiders, the Giants, Commanders, and Panthers. There's no one down the rest of the schedule that you're looking at and saying they can't win. They can't beat this team. They could beat the rest of their opponents. And do I think they're going to? Absolutely not. I definitely don't say that. I definitely don't think that. That starts with a division game against the Saints. I actually have them losing that one on the road. That is a rivalry right there. They will they'll split that series after Week 10. And then they go to the Broncos. Again, I've talked about it a lot. The Broncos, I think, might be the worst team in football this season. I hate their quarterback situation. Their defense is kind of a mess, and there's not really too much hope coming out of Bronco land right now. They win Week 11, heading into a bye on Week 12, and then they get to reload for an important stretch because they're still in the thick of a division race, sitting after Week 11 at at 5-6 with the rest of this division. And again, we already went through the rest of the schedule after the bye: Chargers, Vikings, Raiders, Giants, Commanders, Panthers. Who scares you on that list? There's no one that really does scare you. But that doesn't mean they can get complacent, because the Chargers have a guy named Justin Herbert, and Justin Herbert is very good at football. I think he's going to use his football powers and and dismantle this Falcons team. They do lose Week 13 to the Chargers, but they bounce back. A big game against the Vikings. That is a revenge game for Kirk Cousins. He's going to go off, throw for 400 yards, and they're going to dominate that one up in Minnesota. The Raiders as well. I have them winning that game in Las Vegas. Again, that one could get a little chippy. That could go either way, but I'm taking them to win in Week 15. Up to this point, they're now 7-7 on the season. They've gotten back to 500 with 3 games to go. Giants, Commanders, Panthers. That sounds like a nice, easy schedule, but you don't want to look ahead, right? And I actually have them dropping the next 2 games. I think the Giants are a team that might be able to get one from some teams, and I had them going 6-11 this season, so they're not going to be too great, but this is sandwiched for them in between a whole bunch of tougher teams. Cowboys, Ravens, Colts, Eagles. That's what's surrounding this game for the Giants, and this is a game that I feel like they kind of get up for. They've been pretty solid against Kirk Cousins in his career so far, so I'm giving the Giants this win. Same thing with the Commanders. I think they're going to lose that game, although this one I'm a little more shaky on, actually. I could go either way on this. I do have them losing this game to the Commanders, though. And then Week 18, going against the Panthers for the division, I have them winning finishing 8-9, making the playoffs, and this is a bad season for them. Like I said, I've gone through it and I've said, hey, this is not a hard schedule. This is the easiest schedule in the league, actually. There's the games that I gave them losses, 3, 4, 5 of them. 1, 2, excuse me, 3, 4, 5 of those games I could see becoming wins. This is the absolute low point for the Falcons, and I'm not convinced that Kirk Cousins will be all the way back from his Achilles, and I want to see how this coaching staff works and how that defense is going to be as we continue on the path here. I've been finishing 8-9, but this is a team that very easily could be 13-4. Right, this is an easy schedule, and I think they make the playoffs regardless. But again, much like the Buccaneers before them, I'm a little lower on their output this season. Anywhere from 8 to 13 wins is their window, and I know that's a huge window, and you're going to look at me like, oh, that's not really even a prediction. My official prediction is 8-9, but their ceiling is 13 wins with a schedule like this. Let me know what you think in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the Falcons, on anything else in the NFC South. I have the Falcons winning this division at 8-9, Bucks at 7-10, Saints at 6-11, and Panthers at 5-12. Only one of those teams is going to make the playoffs, and that is the Falcons. So let me know what you think of that division. Any other complaints you had with my with my predictions here, I'd love to hear them. But we are going to close off our show here in our next segment, doing our Friday MLB Power Rankings. So stick around for that. We'll be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.